Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we're continuing the rise of Sima Yi Let's Talk Lore series with episode 9, titled The Conquest of Liaodong. Now, last episode we ended as Sima Yi emerged victorious from Wuzhang Plains, and even with Zhuge Liang dying of natural causes and the lack of grand battles, Sima Yi got all the credit and fame for resolving the Shu Han threat. But while Emperor Taorui trusted Sima Yi and relied on Sima Yi while Zhuge Liang was alive, the moment the Shu Han threat dissipated, Taorui's strong political instinct immediately kicked in and realized the need for balance within his court, as if Sima Yi's prestige continues to grow unchecked, he would become a threat to his dynasty within. So when Sima Yi requested to press this opportunity and launch an attack against Shu Han's interior, Taorui turned Sima Yi down, because imagine if Sima Yi successfully conquers the kingdom of Shu Han. At that point, his achievements would far surpass those of both Emperors Taorui and Cao Pi, and even come close to matching that of Cao Cao. And we all know when you have that much prestige as a subject, you either become a usurper, as in the case of Cao Cao, or you get killed by the emperor, as in the case of Han Xing at the beginning of the Han dynasty. So with Emperor Taorui not giving Sima Yi that opportunity, Sima Yi was effectively stashed away on the quiet Western Front for the next 3 years. Politically, he was rewarded for his victory at Wuzhang Plains with a promotion from Grand General to Grand Commandant in 235, but honestly, this was more of a lateral move, as the Grand Commandant is the more prestigious role but has much less real power, while the Grand General had much more military control. And if Taorui really wanted to promote Sima Yi, he would have made him into Da Sima, or the Supreme Military Commander, much like Cao Xiu and Cao Zhen before him. But Taorui didn't do this, and that says a lot. Now, Sima Yi did not let these 3 years go to waste, as from 234 to 237, he spread his influence throughout the western provinces with military assignments, and even defeated one small Shu Han incursion led by Ma Dai in 235, and recovered the Wudu commandery on the Mount Si path, as the local administrator there voluntarily surrendered to Wei after losing faith in the declining Shu Han power. Now, by 237, Sima Yi was 59 years old and has spent the last 6 years of his life out on the Western Front, ever since answering Zhuge Liang's 4th Northern Expedition back in 231. While his prospects within the Wei court has cooled considerably, his control over the western provinces had grown to an uncomfortable level for the Wei court, as Emperor Taorui would be warned by his childhood imperial tutor, Gao Tangrong, who was on his deathbed, that a recent sighting of a pair of blood-red chicks nesting in a swallow's nest within the imperial palace is a warning sign for the imperial family. Now, this story relates to cuckoos and other birds that lay their eggs in other birds' nests as a mean to trick the bird into raising their chicks, and for this to happen in the imperial palace, Gao Tanglong was hoping to use this story as a warning to Emperor Taorui that certain factions within the Wei court was growing too strong, and that the Cao imperial clan was growing too weak, as under the founding Emperor Cao Pi's policies, imperial princes could not hold any key court positions and could not host their own armies within their princedoms, so Gao Tangrong wanted to convince his former student Emperor Taorui to abolish his father's policy and allow the various regional princes into building their own armies so they could become usable forces against any external threats to the dynasty itself. Well, Taorui did not agree to abolish his father's policy on the princes, as arming them would also bring the added threat of an internal civil war within the imperial clan. He did realize that Gao Tanglong was warning him about the Sima clan and how Sima Yi had utilized these years out west to build himself a comfortable power base there. So to fix this, Taorui needed a good reason to uproot Sima Yi from the Western Front without giving the appearance of uprooting him from the Western Front. And it just happens in 237, Taorui was fighting a war out east against Gongsun Yuan, who had just self-proclaimed himself as the emperor of the Kingdom of Yan in the Liaodong region in the northeastern part of the Kingdom of Wei. At the time, Cao Rui had sent another one of his former imperial tutors in Guanqiu Jian to bring an end to Gongsun Yuan's rebellion, but Gongsun Yuan utilized the favorable marshlands of the Liaodong region and was successful in beating back Guanqiu Jian in their first encounter. So Cao Rui turned to Sima Yi, as he ordered him to bring 40,000 troops from the western provinces and march them all the way across China from the northwestern region to the northeastern region and bring an end to Gongsun Yuan's rebellion. Now, this was a legitimate assignment, so Sima Yi could not say no to this request, even though he had just turned 60 that year. And Emperor Cao Rui showered him with respect as Sima Yi made a stop in the imperial capital of Luoyang, where Cao Rui personally received him and asked him if he was confident against Gongsun Yuan. Sima Yi answered that if Gongsun Yuan was smart, he would take his troops and flee east into the mountains, as we cannot afford to keep a long-term garrison of any significant size in that faraway region. So once the main army returns, Gongsun Yuan can come out of his hiding place, retake his cities, and continue to play emperor in that frozen tundra that he calls home. But I don't think he's smart enough to do that, and it's more likely he will try to use the Liao River as his main defensive line against us, and that we will crush him there. Then Emperor Cao Rui asked Sima Yi how long he believed this campaign would take, to which Sima Yi replied, 100 days to march there, 100 days to beat them, 60 days of rest and replenishment, and 100 days to return, so roughly 1 year. Satisfied with this answer, Emperor Cao Rui dismissed Sima Yi and allowed him to make a visit to his hometown in Henei, alongside his younger brother, Sima Fu, who was still the chief treasurer, and his eldest son, Sima Shi, who had just become Emperor Cao Rui's personal attendant by the emperor's own promotion. This gesture was meant to give Sima Yi a grand homecoming, but also a hint that Cao Rui wanted Sima Yi to retire soon, and by promoting his eldest son, Sima Shi, to become an imperial attendant, Cao Rui was both keeping a political hostage while Sima Yi was out on campaign, and telling Sima Yi that he will promote his eldest son in the future, as the imperial attendant position was the best springboard to a promising career at court. And Sima Yi knew this full well, as even out west he was beginning to hear rumors of the growing discomfort the emperor and the court felt about him. So he would go on to make two gestures, hoping to alleviate some of Cao Rui's fears about him. First, he told Emperor Cao Rui that he felt personally at fault for draining the Wei coffers in the recent years, which indirectly slowed Emperor Cao Rui's palace constructions, while in dynasties past, capable ministers such as the Duke of Zhou during the Zhou dynasty and the minister Xiao He during the Han dynasty were not only able to win their emperor land in battle, but also able to build them new palaces. So he hopes that the emperor can just wait a little while longer as he strives to bring peace and stability to the land, and once that's achieved, he can retire and help Cao Rui finish his palace personally. Of course, another hint he was dropping with this statement is that both the Duke of Zhou and Minister Xiao He, the two officials he used in his example, were fierce loyalists historically, and he wanted Cao Rui to see him in that light. Now, this was not trickery, but just self-preservation, as regardless of Sima Yi's true intentions at this point, he needed to clear up Cao Rui's concerns about him, or else the only fate awaiting him would be his death. The second gesture that Sima Yi did was at the end of his homecoming visit to Henei, where he sung a song to his hometown crowd, with the lyric ending in that he awaits the day he can retire to his homeland, as he once again strived to tell Emperor Cao Rui that he will retire soon. But circumstances change, and in the meantime, Sima Yi marches on with his fourth of 40,000 veterans that he had brought with him from the Western Front, with two officers that he had personally promoted himself in Generals Niu Jin and Hu Zun, and they fortunately had a very uneventful march through the coastal roads all the way to the Liao River, which they reached in June of 238. Now, uneventful is good, as sea levels were much higher on China's east coast during this period in history, and the coastal roads leading up to Liaodong were particularly prone to flooding until the early Song dynasty, when sea levels started to subside to levels similar to today. Once at the Liao River, Sima Yi saw that, as he had predicted, Gongsun Yuan had marched almost all of his army out of the capital city of Xiangping and stretched them out on the east bank of the Liao River in a defensive posture. Using this deployment to his advantage, Sima Yi ordered his main force to loop north, taking the long way to bypass the marshlands west of the Liao River, while a smaller force was placed at the south end where they set up multiple encampments and used excess banners to give the false appearance that the main army was grouping in the south for an attack. This pulled Gongsun Yuan's main forces south and farther away from their capital city of Xiangping. So when Sima Yi's main force crossed the Liao River with minimum resistance in the north, Gongsun Yuan was now caught between a rock and a hard place, since he had to pull back to Xiangping as the families of his troops and officers were located there. But to get there, he has to fight through Sima Yi's main force, who was already racing ahead to Xiangping, while at the same time deal with Sima Yi's southern force, who no doubt will be right on their heels. 3 battles would occur on Gongsun Yuan's retreat back to Xiangping, and 3 victories Sima Yi would score, as by the time Gongsun Yuan returned to his capital, the war was already over, as his battered forces were now cramped inside the city, completely surrounded by Sima Yi's army, and the siege of Xiangping was on. Now, initially, the siege did not go well for Sima Yi, as heavy rain in July made the frontal attack difficult, so Sima Yi patiently waited, even as water levels rose on the Liao River, threatening to flood Sima Yi's encampments and supply lines, and his officers started to clamor for a retreat until he executed one of them and explained to the rest that while he took Shangyong in less than 10 days after relentlessly sieging the city, the situation therein is completely different. Currently, they have less troops than Gongsun Yuan despite their 3 wins, but they also have much more food and supplies, whereas back during the attack in Shangyong, he had the manpower advantage, but only 1 month worth of supplies, so speed was of the essence then. Here, the last thing they want is for Gongsun Yuan to give up hope and flee the city, as Sima Yi did not want to spend his 60s chasing after Gongsun Yuan in the frigid mountains of the northeast. And with the heavy rain, all they had to do now is complete their enclosure of the city and wait. Gongsun Yuan's large troop count and civilians inside the city will wait on their food supplies, and once they run out, they will either surrender or die of hunger. Then by August, as the rain receded and Gongsun Yuan started to run out of food, soon a few officers and their starving units decided to flee the city and surrender to Sima Yi in exchange for food and mercy. And not long after, a falling star in the middle of the night crashed into the Liao River, and the people of Liaodong saw it as a sign of Gongsun Yuan's fall as the city started to panic. Losing control inside, Gongsun Yuan sent out an envoy to Sima Yi's camp, hoping to negotiate a surrender for leniency. But Sima Yi rejected the proposal on the ground that the officials that Gongsun Yuan sent out were too low level, as he executed the envoy. Gongsun Yuan then sent out his top official, but Sima Yi rejected the proposal again, as Gongsun Yuan can really no longer be trusted after his past flirtations with Sun Quan. Sima Yi told the envoy that farther negotiations are not necessary unless Gongsun Yuan wants to tie himself up and surrender in person. Unwilling to do that, Gongsun Yuan and his son, along with 100 loyal guards, made a run for it, but Sima Yi gave unrelenting pursuit, and legend claims that Gongsun Yuan would fall precisely where the meteorite had struck earlier. His head would be sent back to Luoyang and displayed at the city gates for all to see, but aside from Gongsun Yuan, Sima Yi had no intentions of sparing the starving city of Xiangping. Over 2,000 officials that had worked briefly under Gongsun Yuan's short-lived imperial court for the kingdom of Yan would be executed. But furthermore, all males over the age of 15 in the city of Xiangping, equal to roughly 7,000 at the time, would all be beheaded to make a jingguan, or a mountain of skulls, as an example for anyone who might consider rebelling against Wei in the future. And Sima Yi would not be done here, as he would also force the migration of the vast majority of the Han population from Liaodong back inland, leaving behind only 40,000 registered households in the northeast. This obviously would have a lasting effect on the weakening of Han influence in this region, opening the door to the rise of nomadic kingdoms and Korean kingdoms in the coming centuries. Now, with that, Sima Yi's conquest of Liaodong is complete, and our episode here also comes to an end. Next time, we'll return with the finale episode of the series on the rise of Sima Yi, as he would once again become a co-regent, as Empress Haorei's health will take a sudden turn while Sima Yi was out in Liaodong. So hopefully y'all have enjoyed this episode enough to consider subscribing to the channel, or simply hit that like button and leave a comment below to help support the channel. And now with this series getting so much love and so many likes in the past few days, as you guys have been easily able to hit that 200 like milestone, I decided to make this episode extra long and filled with political details, such as Haorei's growing concerns in regard to Sima Yi's rise. But for the finale episode, I'm going to need to see 300 likes within the first 24 hours to get that episode out early tomorrow night. So hit that like button, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!